Hello, dear Jim Acosta and CNN. I understand how you guys are victims needing to react to the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts in nature, sequence shifts, and roles with self-valued identity thefts and frauds. Worse than interstates and worse than just internations, shared individually, grouped, and together as victims, where originally instilled reactions to it as fact-shaping nature, as identities of the ground, fact-shaping nature, blaming on other things, others themselves, the real cause of those negative value nature progressions, acts in nature. It is only a partial truth, and it is a truth only to lie, used to lie. For example, all victims' roles with why and how. Farmers can't afford to have organic means that they need on a mass scale, where they are forced to help us who are in tactically, overtly, where it isn't overtly, tactically denatured identity of the ground relationships to the ground's identity of value / value progression, let alone to ourselves, per a method that exploited that, knew that it would cause negative value nature progressions, acts in nature, distinct natures of victims, distinctly victims needing to respond as what would then have to defend themselves as that, for fact-shaping nature responses, per a method that keeps that invested pseudo-integrity. Its integrity valuing what is recorded, confessed, and demonstrated through the youngest kids. This is roles with an identity theft, frauds. This is what keeps all victim predators. So there were such nice women on my street, 2 women. I just found out they're sisters. I didn't know. Because I have to speak, I had to learn about this since I was a kid, where everyone speaks through others. And these are people that sought me out to make confessions and stuff like that. In other words, that's not a confession. These are good people. I said bad things on the internet before because of their victim responses to an O'Brien family and to others involved, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, state police, their family members, prosecutors, judges, their family members, involved intercities, on and off Central Connecticut State University, as a victim, originally and still, of science as a bridge, we had to keep going anyway. So they have to train teachers as best they could. So they have to have sciences standing at the same place where they have the educational part of it. Because teaching sciences is distinct from knowing sciences. And it's where those little campuses are the same thing. Abridged sciences only having been known, only having been fathomed. The causes of that were blamed on other things other than themselves. For real reasons, self-valued, being and having been used for lies. For example, they say slavery was in Connecticut, which is the north, but while it was distinctly in the north and south. But they, in other words, through England. But England's just a little country. And this is all, in other words, this is before our founding parents were even born. Countries individually grouped and together were victims, defending reactions by needing to defend identities individually grouped and together, tactical ulterior from the value / value progression. That is why we are individually grouped actually, and species identity of volume / S actually. That is its own identity of volume that all others are juxtaposed with. And as where and how we are value as nature / nature as value simultaneously. This is invisible but is still discernible. And this is a conjunction to where and how they are preventing our short words and our counters to predicate acts, like, and roles with them, and methods of that. Like Wethersfield Police have been switching names with officers that were recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, involved with people that walked by me when I don't even know their names yet. I know a Yagman family is also involved with them, with a Phil Cololo, and two Mendez Police, fabricating audio and video with my town's police chief, and roles with other natures of organized crime, and with overt criminal enterprises. So watch the last video I just uploaded. So this is regarding interstate. These are state police from Vermont, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, associated with former director of the FBI's co-defendants in a 2006 case that also have family members involved before and after I was in high school, and while I was in high school, with predicate acts with them in their databases, also with political families and how they're connected to Washington, D.C., and to the Pentagon, and to the World Trade Center attack investigators, who also were recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with this. Various natures of courts involved with predicate acts with the Leahy family that fabricated whole conversations, fabricated with me. 3 times they forced me for a mental evaluation. They have those locations that were recorded from before that with the people that were in there, their patients, the whole families that worked, there are men and women in a Leahy family, a bunch of them, associated with predicate acts around the schools and with houses next to them, with drug crimes and medicine crimes, with judges and prosecutors also, while they've been fabricating audio and video, exploiting anomaly with the syntax directives to jobs, like people who answer the phones. So WFSB also fabricated audio and video to hide the lie progressions of the many families associated with the state police and Wethersfield Police and the FBI in their defendant capacities. And this is where they're lying to and hiding this from attorney generals. They're keeping attorney generals in collusion with political parties that are themselves individually grouped and together, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, criminally foreign influenced and delusions wrought in that self-value, per how they are victim predators. See, but we have to be able to report how people are victims. Otherwise, there is fact-cheaping nature worse than organized crime. There's fact-cheaping nature, predicate acts, uses collusion, predicate acts, methods collusion that is self-valued by everybody because of how we are being and having been exploited since we are kids, where everyone was blaming the real causes of what it causes, blaming the other things other than themselves, and where and how names are being used because of how identity is being used and having been used. So they can't have understood all that is actually available to correlation nature with our short words, increasingly with our active and progressive words. So they have to value identity of the ground locations, where the sciences have to be in the same location as the places that are going to make the teaching part of it. Now see, so look, that originally instilled, this breaching method knew that those all points of sophistication abridged and self-valued that way would be increasingly incapable of defending themselves and not self-valuing, lie progressions from those locations back to all locations further and further. And as standing styles of logic and uses of positive and negative and of other people's identities and sequence and uses of everyone speaking through others' self-value, where and how that is exploited and having been exploited by what is parallel. I mean, by what is simultaneous. Because all identity of the ground locations, areas, and states of every modern country, nation, territory, every location, area, and state, science is further, private databases further simultaneously, rolls with one bonded identity of value progression that is tactical ulterior from the identity of value/value progression that inventions work or not in relationship to it. They are further positive or not in relationship to it. So my name is Anthony Wall. I have a double major. I have a degree, a Bachelor of Arts, a double major in English, Arts, and Communications. Now, for example, with my short words and with everybody's short words, the sciences individually grouped and together are leveraging it so we can't make the proper short words regarding how the predicate of English and how the predicate act of the law share an identity of relativity between themselves, which is more than just relativity. It's more than just correlation or discorrelation. It is the only increasing value of that simultaneously. It is a simultaneous nature that all subjects are qualified in relationship to it. So its subject, not one thing can become, the finite can't be denied. So now its subject as a computer, and these are database relationships since before computers that were part of this. Where the identity, the ground locations, no, when you have all that simultaneously used, let me just explain to people who don't understand how computers work. There's a screen. There's an interface. So, from a calculator, YouTube has videos about that. You can search. There are books about how all this, the summary of it. See, but this they don't say. But they can't deny this without demonstrating. Uses of self-value, criminally foreign influence, premises treatment, sequence treatments, finite active, progressive treatments, identity treatments. So you know how computers are about an identity stream. Before they're about a data stream. Sound is an identity stream. The notes of music individually grouped and together. They share an identity, share individually grouped and together. Now there are proofs that the ancients understood this. And that semi-ancients set it up so the phenomenon of what modern nations are, they would self-value, criminally foreign influenced, even, breaching method employed against themselves. Uses of premise treatment, sequence treatments, identity of the grounds, being and having been involved with that breaching method. Therefore, that was actually employed, entrenched below and over everyone's fact treatment nature, where and how that is sustained, where and how we are a value/value progression, as a quality of diffusion only automatically temporary positive. But where and how that temporary positive identity of the ground location, area and state that was native pure, the one that the inventions work or not in relationship to it. They are further positive or not in relationship to it. And the value of that is only increasing. So, for example, there are criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments that were our recorded being and having been self-valued by victims as victim ahs, also self-valuing arrays of difference as sides, like black and white. Those differences were forced by the breaching method, other than their actual demonstration in course, which is about the invisible but still discernible. But rather than have its short words afforded means, see, we're going to examine how already in all kinds of cases, people from Wethersfield, Connecticut, interbranch, everyone speaking through others, they have been used remotely since before electronic definitions of the word remote. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, federal criminals as his co-defendants in a 2006 part of a case that was ongoing /S, and that was ongoing at the time of my father's death. His co-defendants, their family members, they were also recorded, confessed, demonstrating involved with various natures of courts and their family members, and people that work with them and their family members, and their neighbors, involved leading up to the World Trade Center attack and since with predicate acts. Now these are people also who've been hiding it per their uses. They have fire departments. They have the policing of stores. They have all along routes with identities manifest. Like say when they jump into a private conversation with someone, since founding, we've had obligations to demonstrate how our military, how our branches of government, and how the branches of government and the militaries of other nations and countries and territories were criminally for foreign influence overtly and delusions raw. Especially when they're speaking about positive or negative or identity or reality, which is an increasing identity of volume, increasingly self-value denied by people that need to pretend they've been about integrity. Where and how that has to not realizing the self-value rolls with counters to all locations, areas, and states, only capable of self-valuing the real causes of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, and natures from an increasingly shared source, blamed on other things other than themselves, dishonestly, while pretending to be honesty, while gleaning integrity through contrast, while attaching finite, active, progressive lies and sequence shifts on those sick people, recorded made sick and kept sick, and often framed by the interbranch, individually grouped and together, crime methods distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously manifest, because they have to get over on what is actually correlation natures means by short words. So we have originally and still, it was his recorded evidence that and how the bar itself was criminally foreign influence, delusions raw. There were our increasing needs to counter predicate acts, delivery system methods, and roles and natures like criminal and citizen's natures, in fact, as fact-sheeting nature, in relationship to increasingly negative value nature, progressions, acts, and natures upon every individual of every location, area, and state. The locations, areas, and states themselves, the ground itself, was a victim in a sustained way. While engineered, everyone was being tricked, hurt, persuaded, taken as ours, worse, not realizing. Everyone sickly, distinctly being hurt, so everyone would increasingly self-value, be locked into what can only self-value, blame the other things other than themselves, what non-distinctly was hurting everybody, which is that breaching method to all identity ground locations. And this is where the ground has engineering ties, natural native engineering tie, /S, to our fact-sheeting nature, to our identity, our name. So we have this method that keeps the agencies themselves. It kept and keeps the various natures of courts themselves, fake, in collusion, fake sides of correlation nature, self-value, that defended. That manifests as styles of logic that can't defend itself and afford short words of anyone who's going to demonstrate what's actually recorded, how the overt criminal enterprises and private ones and the overt killers and the people of locations most forsaken and all tied to that. All locations are forsaken, let alone the most forsaken. And see, not by accident, they left and leave out the recorded proofs of the fact-sheeting nature slavery, of our founding parents, not by action, self-value. So there are a whole bunch of judges and prosecutors recorded, confessed, and demonstrated also with foreign and domestic families in overt criminal enterprises, with houses on Church Street in Old Weathersfield, that are also involved with predicate acts on Central Connecticut State University through time. And this has a relationship to how the people that make the educational department is only one department. Then they have the English department, and then they have the sciences department. And they have phenomenon in relationship to where they have the elements that sciences need or purport to need to use that could be and are used for other things, including specifically just to keep investigators being and having been used through how they have to hide live aggressions from the identity of locations, where they use everyone's name in relationship to it, in relationship to sequence shifts, where they have in relationship to where they have trouble, where they're making trouble, the breaching method between people, because it's a method that already effectively maintained the branches of government individually grouped and together, needing to hide live aggressions per collusion with that. Right back to all identity of the ground locations, areas, and states. They pretend they do things and have kids acting and stuff like that because they're testing things. They have what is actually recorded is a vertical and horizontal databases, predicate acts, and rolls with that. Forced by and through people that don't even know each other. They'll pretend other because everyone speaks other people's names. This is also where and how the sense and sensibilities, for example, of people. This is where the arts and where control your hearts, where the predicate, again, with the predicate act, where ratiocination and pseudo-ratiocination share an identity. I'm not a doctor. It is recorded, I've been studying recorded physical delusions of. And in other words, I had delusion. I never had a conversation with a doctor about physical delusions. I'm going to show you their physical delusions and how they've been fabricating audio and video with various natures of courts, and how that was exploited, how they are kept needing to hide live aggressions. But with that, I have to show you first and simultaneously different things first for different reasons. So you have to understand why what is simultaneous has an identity itself, is an identity of value / value progression itself, and is increasing value. Is the phenomenon of what is better than while being the value of the perfect world, and while being the value of what is more finite than three identities of zero, only increasing. In relationship to this quality of diffusion, we are actually, per science, actually truth, actually as integrity, actually as the appearances of the law as such, invisible but still discernible. See, this breaching method knew that it took over. Our founding parents were locked. Everyone was locked into a theater by it. That it was already having been sustained. Theaters, criminal insidious natures, all by one though. All further and further to all identity, ground, locations, areas, and states. For all different reasons, needing to self-value, the words of positive, the words of identity, the words of sequence true, the words of what is native true, prevented free speech, the words of and related to exploitations of databases being used to fabricate information, being used to facilitate uses of that, where there's evidence racketeering, way worse. For example, with treatments of the witch trials, even if they're made up, they're demonstrated. There are obligations simultaneously there You don't separate subjects like that from that breaching method, so discernible per their uses of those laws that were in the database relationships then. See, they had obviously, everyone's sickly distinctly as victims. Obviously, this breaching method made it so people are going to need police. People are going to need courts. Because they're getting hurt by a breaching method. By having those courts and those police and everyone against themselves, everyone, fake sides of correlation nature, arrays of fake, of an identity, arrays of and as an identity of a negative identity of negative value nature progression. Where and how we are positive or negative value/value progression in relationship to this identity of volume that has an identity of relationship to itself. It has a value of that is only increasing simultaneously, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. So it is invisible but still discernible. For example, it is distinctly as 3 natures bonded, and it is distinctly as 5 natures bonded by and as the same identity bonded. As what is greater than that, while being its value, and as what is more finite than 3 identities of 0 and demonstration of it. It is its complete identity of volume's complete identity of relationship to itself. So I am not a doctor, but clear as day and night are in demonstration of the clear and correlation nature's trinity. One identity of volume, in other words. Okay, this is long enough, but the point is, this is how one identity of value/value progression generated all things, boxings, from what stays more finite than the smallest thing could ever be. More finite than 3 identities of 0. 3 distinct, invisible, but still discernible identities of 0. This wasn't made up. This was revealed. This is one identity of forever nature that is greater than, while being more finite than 3 identities of 0, while it is being the identity as infinity. It is greater than infinity. It is making more forever nature by making more infinity nature from inside its complete nature, which its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that is volume as identity, and it is invisible but still discernible because its volume is value as nature/nature as value. As those 3 distinct simultaneous natures. They are sequence nature, for example, so that they can be invisible but still discernible. The value of understanding the breach of the predicate action delivery system method leveraged against the Native Americans archetypally. That means understanding that leveraged against Native Europeans, Native England, for example, regarding their roles with the original possession, the original/progressed possession of themselves there and of us here. This is where and how everyone's victim predators as fact cheap in nature. So they need to make fights between people, or they need to make people just give up and just accept how people are nice, which I do. And I'm so grateful to have such nice neighbors and sisters. See, but I still need to counter with that which they don't have the sense and sensibility to counter, which are further roles with the principal child defenders campus, with prosecutors and judges retired and standing, involved with an O'Brien family, with police forms intercities and with their identity of the ground locations, no. Now these are the people involved also with mayors and with elections locations and with uses of religious locations per the sense and sensibilities of everyone uses others, everyone forced to speak through others. And where and how they're just fabricating audio and video, attaching everyone to fake words and locations. So the buildings next to Fox Connecticut News and next to WFSB are recorded and involved with a whole bunch of people. Also involved with locations with where they have clubs and stuff like that, where people are going to interact. They have that maintained by a breaching method that maintains its needs to cover up its cause, its roles with causing illusions, negative value nature, progressions, action nature that it's caused. That people have to fact check nature respond to. They have to physically respond to simultaneously. That is being and having been employed by a breaching method that has those responses then defended, blaming other things other than themselves for what the breaching method caused and did and does with every location, area, and state per method. So it is evidence how the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people associated with body dumping spots were also involved, also people on the child sex offender registry, have in military, foreign, and domestic, not leaving out other than how quickly what keeps them knaves with the law and with counters to things that lead up to war before that. The things that lead up to escalations with technology and the consumption of human potentials and capabilities applied only to what is identity of negative value nature progression capable of being further and further incapable of being that identity of science that is inseparable from the identity of the ground. So we have to claim ground science, because this is worse than extortion. And so we have to realize we have to deal with the individuals involved here, because also where and how we have problems on our campuses, off our campuses, on our businesses, off our businesses, on off our homes. We have to counter the roles with it and the uses of the roles with it that were recorded. But this demonstrates how we have investigators and processes and things at campuses of each age and nature already being and having been in collusion, already having been self-valued on the record, physical delusions, fabricated audio and video, admissions of this, worse than prostrates and prevents our means to counter as fact-cheating nature, things like wars and that lead up to them. Things like nature's sabotage, nature's uses by a breaching method, pretending others simultaneously, employing people to fact-cheat nature roles with uses of words/values like environment, in collusion with that which with the bar and the branches of government originally still used remotely, criminally foreign influenced, delusions wrought, victim predators. See how they are predators has to be countered in the conversation of where we're treating them as victims. But they're preventing this. It's because they want us to call them predators. Because they're involved with sequence shifts, they're involved already with locations, with killings, with killers, with body dumping spots, with cases, even like juries and things like that. We have people, originally still worse than criminally incompetent by a breaching method. That's evidence. Then people want to debate and fight debates about evidences where they have physical delusions and where they have criminally foreign influence premises, treatments, and relationships. All words / values, let alone phrases like the nature of the law. the nature is, the nature of the law. See, the law as it was presented to them. This all locations, areas, and states. Before our founding parents were born, already they were being used in such a way that was consciously, without anyone realizing, engineering that Native Americans would blame others themselves, wrongly, for the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts like predicate acts, natures like criminal and citizen natures, wrongdoers, with opinions, with convictions, with lies, with truths used for lies. All right. So we have to have mandated law followed outside of courts. And it is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed how. See, these are little box houses in the suburbs. Since before cars, that which was involved with the fact, treatment, nature, torture, and slavery of our founding parents was involved with the construction and the staid pathology of the construction of Hartford, designed as a suburban/urban city, capital of Connecticut, no. New Haven, the same thing. And it's right next to Wethersfield, Connecticut, where George Washington had to come to meet the French general. So we have all that taken to criminal and CCSU natures of positive treatments, in collusion with the overt/insidious negative treatments, wherein how James Madison and the backing behind George Washington that enabled him to fathom. It had to meet with the French general there first to end the first war of the revolution. Not the revolution, not free speech yet. Not counters to that offensively pretending to be about free speech while it's against it. While it's preventing short words increasingly. While it's pretending other. While it's keeping people only capable of self-valuing roles with that. As natures as that. As criminal and CCSU natures, as wrongdoers. So they present to you on theater. Like formally, when we have people interbranch teach to people through television about law and they take sides of issues. Oh, now the defendant, now the plaintiff. And these are the witnesses and these are the processes. That's involved with they put fake sides. They bring up subjects. They bring up sequence treatments. They bring up fact treatments where there's an array of liars. Fake sides of correlation natures simultaneously bonded, inherent, active, and progressive dimensions. With two identities of sequence/simultaneous nature says simultaneously with that. Now, these are long videos. There are people I have fake conversations with me I had no conversations with at all. I had one word of conversation with a Leahy, older Leahy guy. And I asked for a response because he put fake conversation with me on paper. He pretended he had fake conversation with me in real life. He's got his sons, a whole bunch of people then and further with a principal child offenders campus. And with other people associated with them, with other principals associated with that campus, retired and standing on other campuses that are as victims. But it is recorded how it's in such a way where like that they become and stay victim predators. So I need to have a response because that's needed by the courts that are criminally involved with them personally too, grouped together. So they need to hide libel aggression. So they need to pretend people have issues that are separate from them. They need to pretend that what is actually recorded doesn't exist. For legitimate reasons being used illegitimately. So Hartford courts and the Britain courts were all recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with locations and on and off campuses with predicate acts, realizingly and or not. but then they were exploited in ways they have worse than criminal incompetence, and they simultaneously have physical delusions still. So they have aggressions and passions and emotions. For example, Jim Acosta. I asked for a response because CCSU, through administrations, they're recorded clear as day. I was happier than anyone. And I'm so glad we had such a great first black president, per their syntax. Because now we can see science, why and how. Now we can discern why and how science, forsaken, everyone pretending other, has been getting away with it. They have these parties sickly distinctly as victims to each other. But the reactions to it and defenses of it, blaming each other, blaming other things other than themselves for the real cause of negative value nature progression. They painted themselves into corners, blaming what really causes and furthers the overt criminal enterprises the most on other things other than themselves. They are recorded with the private ones and with overt, just sick people, kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finite, active, progressive lies, identity thefts and frauds roles. Per worse than what is recorded with it. Oh, this is what identity thefts and frauds be. You're not a lawyer. It's evidence how the lawyers originally instilled would use time always too fast, too slow, while they're fabricating audio and video with themselves, all tied to them, the other branches of government, and all those shared policings. Everyone just kept naive. What was propagated was the defenses of uses of positive treatments, negative treatments, as criminal and seditious natures. Uses of that. Methods by that. So I don't know this Rick Faglione. He's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed also with a Zano family, with agencies involved criminally, with people on off Trinity College and CCSU through time involved as one of the people involved with Hartford Hospital, with foreign and domestic families involved with locations next to schools and all along Route 3 involved with identity thefts and frauds, sequence shifts, federal crimes with databases, and with medical racketeering that involves judges and prosecutors further with worse than they put people on the child defender registry for. Then and now, those were in collusion with their doctors and with the various natures of courts personally, criminally involved with them, and off the Wethersfield Town Library, and all the schools in Wethersfield, and I've been asking for a response for this for a long time. This is also a method where they attach little kids and their family members to fake words, where they use criminally foreign influenced readings of statutes, and then they use truths as lies. For example, summaries of them, where they say, oh, well, these laws say that we don't have to tell parents about certain things. So that's simultaneously saying they could lie to parents. That is being and having been exploited by a method that kept and keeps these parties and the agencies and the news locations and their employments also being and having been involved with relevant predicate acts, delivery system, method, acts, roles, needs, and natures. No, everyone's speaking through other people, things, selves. Then they pretend, oh, well, you brought my name, that's why I'm pretending passions and emotions. I don't know if the woman I spoke to on Facebook was the mother of Eric Oliveri and a Craig Oliveri. I never had a conversation with a Craig Oliveri. Eric Oliveri recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They're involved with they called me up as strangers in the past to make bombs. They made bombs one time. I barely know them, and he had rolled with a woodshop class that is also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with a whole bunch of people tied to houses in my area that are involved with people intercities with the campuses, that are involved with predicate acts with kids, real sick things with doctors, and with our human fact-cheating nature, and where they exploit, where everyone speaks to other people. So they pretend they know that people know each other through that. And people don't know each other. So that's exploited. So we have interbranch switching names. While they're pretending the more and more people, they're putting more and more names of people that have fake conversations with us. They have officers, they switch the courts and the police forms distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, and grouped, leaving out the political families also recorded, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with it. They switch names of arresting officers. They have the people that are associated with the programs tied to the courts. They have a guy named Darren. I don't know his last name. And they have programs that tied to the New Britain Superior Court. That has East Hartford, judges and people associated with judges, prosecutors, and foreign policing. Roles with private, all simultaneously. They're using identity ground locations near where they make aircraft, where they have even the business next to the people with I don't know what it's called, CRT or whatever like that. So they're involved with these judges and prosecutors and doctors that forge names, switch names, and are involved with exploitation of anomaly, with databases and with torture methods that were since before the World Trade Center attack, because these are also people involved with predicate acts, as these ones rolls with the principal child defenders campus further than and now, in my town, intercities with other campuses. And with conjunctions between houses and businesses next to the schools, like next to Buckley High School. There's a Joe Aiello who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed his roles with a former Mayor Gold. Other people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed him also involved with them with various natures of predicate acts, but also with people that are on the child sex offender registry. And on my street with him, with judges and prosecutors, with evidence racketeering through time, with identity thefts and frauds, as people involved with overt criminal enterprises, and with on-off campuses connected abuses of boys and girls sickly distinctly, uses of everyone sick speaking through others. So there's a Phil Cololo, and there are people on all sides of the high school that pretended they knew me in the past. And in other words, I had nothing to do with them. They try to pretend things by recording illusions when people walk by. There are a bunch of people, like different times. They mix it out year to year because they're qualifying criminal insidious natures of positive treatments and databases in relationship to correlation natures. Positive treatments kept criminal insidious natures, which is evidence when people make opinions or convictions regarding what caused slavery, what causes people to forsake correlation. When you look at what is built for people to live in, upon again, overtly, tactically denatured identity ground relationships. We have narratives. We have people that are invested. They can only defend themselves now legally by pretending to be about things like empathy. With physical delusions, criminal forms, they can't follow mandated law. These are people, all programs. So follow mandated law, because Weathersfield Police Department recorded, confessed, and demonstrated they've been fabricating audio and video with other agencies. Now they'll say, oh, I didn't say that. They use words like said in communications criminally. Also, the sequence shifts reveal this. And everyone's speaking through others, so no one understands the extent of it. The second people try to, no, this is also a pattern where the only time I know the people that have the connections is that they approached me in the past with confessions, knowing my name ahead of time, and uses of that are also recorded criminally involved. But you have to be able to talk to someone. But they have all the people that anyone could talk to directed to make conspiracy theories about people. While they have them they don't even realize themselves, they're just putting fake audio and video and quotations into databases. So over the last few months, Wethersfield police have been using their phones and the Wethersfield town offices, switching names and forging names. Now they have officers, males that use the name Sullivan. And they have a female officer, Sullivan. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, and involved with them with being coached to roles attaching little kids and their families to fake words, with foreign and domestic medical families, involved with drug crimes, also overt drugs and medicine drugs crimes on my street, and with EMS, and with houses on my street, mothers fighting with each other, and the police make confessions to strangers about that. And then these doctors that pretended conversations with me. And then we have a Judge Killian, also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. One of the judges that's involved with a Leahy family. That's a probate court judge. But a Leahy family is also involved with Brian Silver and other men and women, with dozens of them from New Britain Superior Court, involved with judges and prosecutors retired and standing, involved with predicate acts with databases in my town, interbranch, intercampuses when they were kids. They already, what is actually recorded shows that and how each location, area, and state has fake identities of integrity speaking. So they want to speak with like Mr. Biden, with all respect. You say, oh, they're trying to say we have no sophistication. They want to keep it at that level of naive logic, positive and negative identity treatment. That can't defend itself and afford the short words and demonstration of how what is actually recorded is easily all investigations investigated in vetting identities. They even have a guy named Hunter told to use that name or whatever. On and off Central Connecticut State University, also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated all along Farmington Avenue. Involved with people that themselves recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed where the Harriet Beecher Stowe, Mark Twain house is. Also involved with judges and prosecutors of New Britain, other cities, Hartford, involved with them as the people involved leading up to the World Trade Center attack and in it, and with our military police and families criminally involved, and with my name. People I never tried to contact in my life, too, with their Confederate flag, KKK themed. Also next to the school themed, next to religious locations themed. So they have Jewish religious locations and cultural places, and they have like Christian and Catholic places as evidence about how, for example, I asked online for a response. For example, New Britain Superior Court's Facebook page is involved with rape threats, involved with officers that have been fabricating audio and video, switching names, falsifying police reports with other towns' police forms and police departments. So they leave a record in databases that doesn't make sense and no one can get an answer. And those lies and illusions are being and having been exploited. There's a Chet Casper, and I don't know I forgot the name of his sister. I never met his sister. Never had a conversation with him. One time he was recorded, confessed. A whole bunch of people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He's involved with investigators that all along route where in houses on off where Route 2 Route Highway runs into Hangdog Lane. There are people involved with identity thefts and frauds and sequence shifts and falsified police reports, evidence, investigations where their sources are criminally foreign influence with themselves. And so this is not them alone. So they value having had all the locations also involved, kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finite active progressive lies, identity thefts, frauds, roles, per another method nature of it, worse than what is in books. They have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes. That's what the words of the nature of the law say. Use correlation. So they have all kinds of, they prevent people freedom of religion. They have these, in other words, we have people forcing abuses of kids. And they have roles with gun crimes and with drug crimes and with database crimes and with wire crimes with Kevin Dillon and Anna Dillon. She also uses the name Annie Dillon. They have name switching, forging for time sequence treatments too, where they use interbranch locations to fabricate audio and video against citizens. Now, emissions of that reveal what Russians and Chinese and all these nations that are forced to use their identities as a name, they can't defend that and afford to have discerned what yin yang is about. They can't here. We can't afford to have that discerned here. Same thing, alpha and omega. See, yin yang cannot be parted. Just like the species identity of volumes, course, individual grouped and together cannot be parted from itself. So how and why male and female are parted? We're in different bodies. Our species identity of volume is its own identity of body of value progression. Where and has, everything shares one identity of value progression. Where and has and how it is nature as value / value as nature simultaneously. So, it's all right if someone has physical delusion, want to have opinions, but you have to have, they're forging names, switching names, preventing people counters to exploitations of anomaly. Also, for the extent of the natures of organized crime associated with medical racketeering. That's simultaneously, for example, is part of the private and overt criminal enterprises that are simultaneously with the people on the child sex offender registry, recorded how having been kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finite, active, and progressive lies, and roles with the uses of identity ground locations with the courts and the prisons that put them away, and the stewards of those prisons, know as fact treatment nature, know as sequence nature, know as identities as names, and with their uses of our names, and with their uses of defenses of that, where they're preventing writing. All exceptions in exception nature are in demonstration of it. I've been asking for a long time for a counter, because New Britain Superior Court and Wethersfield Police recorded themselves with other police forms and other police departments and private ones, fabricating audio and video into databases and on campuses, not just with the child offenders campus. There were a whole bunch of other people roles with that are also the ones that are roles with uses of the departments distinct grouped, individually grouped together at CCSU, and sense and sensibilities associated with the with all the defense of that, positions in relationship to that. People associated with Paul Kelly also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with that. I don't know him. He's involved with identity theft. People on and off Fox Connecticut News, on and off WFSB, and on and off WTNH. Involved also with FBI, New Haven, and nationally. So worse than interstates. These are some sick Justice Department racketeering natures, originally and still as victims, but as victim predators, that need to be called predators because of the roles that preventing sequence shifts from being demonstrated as evidences, but from roles for them, from the evidence of them fabricating evidences being used from evidence. They're hiding evidences because every day they're talking about evidences. These are people that are pretending to be about news, self-valuing how real news and science was never allowed free speech. They're supposed to be defending an unabridged constitution. They can't do that, so they pretend passions and emotions about other people based on what they hear and say, leaving out what really came first and sustained uses of that. So instead of waiting for me to make the maps, which are coming, don't make it worse. Respond. If you're a steward of Wethersfield schools, you fools. For example, well, in relationship, then you pretend passions and emotions. If I say, in other words, because I asked you 50,000 times, respond for the recorded, confessed, and demonstrated